call to order July 8th City Council meeting. Welcome, everyone. Mr. Short, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for those in attendance this evening, if you wish to speak during the public hearing or any citizen comment period, why don't you sign up on the sheets in the back when it is time for you to speak, if you choose to do so. When you come to the podium, we please ask you to state your name and your address. At that point, the green light goes on. You've got 4 minutes to speak, and we ask you to respect everyone's time equally. All right? Let's see, item 2, adoption of the meeting agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes 4-0. Don't really have any items from me, other than I hope everybody had a great Independence Day, celebrating our nation's birthday. It was hot. I hope everybody stayed hydrated and enjoyed the day and with no lingering after effects. Other than that, it matters from council. Anybody else have anything? Nope. All right, we'll move right along. Then item 5 is consideration of the consent agenda. If everybody's had a chance to look at it, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, 4-0 adopts the consent agenda. Item 6 is to announce the upcoming joint exhibit at the Heritage Museum involving Waynesboro's Kiwanis Club and the Waynesboro Rotary Club, both of which are celebrating their 100 years of community service. The exhibit officially opens to the public on July 12th. I understand, Mr. Short, you have some comments about that?
You pretty much summarized it very, very well. Yeah, so just to let folks know and remind those in attendance and online that there's a joint exhibit at the Heritage Museum celebrating the works and contributions of both the Waynesboro Kiwanis and Rotaries and their 100th year anniversaries. And those exhibits, again, start July the 12th and run through early December.
Thank you. Everybody try to get out. All right, item 7 is consider introducing an ordinance appropriating $1,297,512 for small capital purchases as presented in the fiscal year 2025 budget process. Mr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, and good evening, members of council. The attached budget amendment and appropriation ordinance totaling $1,297,512 is intended to amend the fiscal year 2025 budget. Broadly stated, it intends to purchase small capital items identified in the city manager's fiscal year 2025 budget process for police, administration, parks and recreation, the sheriff, and public works. The amendment's funded by $1,041,512 of unassigned and unrestricted fund balance and net position from the 2023 annual comprehensive financial report and $128,000 of interfund transfers. It's worth noting the fund balance uses noted were identified during the fiscal year 2025 budget process as non-recurring expenditures and expenses that are eligible for use given council's adopted policies. I've attached a copy of the ordinance and a detailed listing of the items included. The detailed listing of the items included is mostly the same as the one that was included in the FY 2025 budget process, with the only major changes of during the budget process, we had contemplated $75,000 for purchase services, outside purchase services for community development. We don't have, that was intended for the comprehensive plan. We don't have final numbers back on that yet, so we will set funds aside during the audit for that and bring a separate appropriation ordinance to fund that project. And then the other one was the laserfish scanning actually went from about 60,000 down to 30,000. The reason for that is the commissioner had contemplated some software in that project to be able to do some business license and meals tax transactions online. She since said that she thinks there's a more holistic, better option that would probably be better served through this CIP process as a bigger tax solution as a whole. So just making council aware that that might end up being a 2026 item. If you all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
No? Doesn't seem to be. Thank you, Mr. McCormick. All right, is there a motion to introduce appropriating $1,297,512 for small capital purchases as stated by Mr. McCormick?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there any further discussion? All right, this ordinance will receive final consideration at the August 12th meeting. Item 8 is to consider introducing an ordinance granting a conditional use permit to allow a manufactured home at 600 North Commerce Avenue, tax map numbers 37-1-32, lots 22, 23, and 24. Victor Ocampo and Soraya Santos are the applicants. Ms. Tate.
Right, good evening, Vice Mayor and members of council. This is a conditional use permit request to allow for the placement of a manufactured home at 600 North Commerce Avenue. So the nature of the request is that the applicants who own the property have applied to relocate their manufactured home from Charlottesville to their property that they own at 600 North Commerce Avenue. And again, that's tax map 37-1-32, and it consists of 3 lots, lots 22, 23, and 24. And those 3 lots are outlined on the presentation screen in blue. So the subject property is located at the corner of Commerce Avenue and 4th Street near the Jack Higgs Bridge on the eastern side of the city. The subject property is located in our RG5 or General Residential District. And you can see with these labels that the property has a mix of uses within the neighborhood, so single-family residential mainly along that portion of Commerce, but then there also are a mix of duplexes, single-family industrial and commercial uses as you travel down Commerce Avenue. So to recap, kind of the tenets within the ordinance for conditional use permits is it's really allowing for a case-by-case review of uses, which may be but are not always compatible with the neighboring uses. So in order to approve conditional use permits, the proposed use must be consistent with good zoning practice, have no adverse or be no more adverse to health, safety, or comfort of persons living or working in the area than those uses that are generally permitted within the district, and be no more detrimental economically or otherwise to property or improvements in the surrounding area than uses generally permitted within the district. As I've already mentioned, the subject property is zoned RG5, which is our most flexible residential district, allowing for a variety of residential uses. And the surrounding neighborhood is a mix of single-family residential, but then also to the south, some mixed business, local business, and additional residential zoning. And this map just shows that mixture of zoning. So the brown color is representative of the mixed business zoning. The orange is the residential RG5, and then kind of that light tan, almost pinkish color represents limited business zoning within the vicinity of the subject property. So now to review some of the zoning requirements. The zoning requirements identify for manufactured homes, no matter what district they're placed in, that they shall be on a full foundation or completely skirted with materials that are approved by the building official, that they be set up and tied down in accordance with the standards that are set by the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code regulations, and then that the wheels, axles, tongue, towing apparatus, and any transporting lights would be removed prior to final installation of the unit. So you'll note that those requirements have been placed as conditions if the permit would be approved, just to kind of further reiterate that they would have to be in compliance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Another component of our zoning ordinance that has come into play with this specific application is this section 98-1, 13.5, which is related to our required yards or our setbacks. So it identifies that your front yard is measured from the front property line. And so what is the front property line in this case? Because this is or essentially the lot has an alley in the back and then Commerce Avenue in the front, and then 4th Street on the side, it's sometimes a bit tricky of what you're identifying as the front. But this section is clear that it is the line that is parallel to the alley. So that would make Commerce Avenue the front of the property, meaning that would be the front setback. But then also this provision D that says all single-family homes and duplexes must have a primary facade and entrance parallel to the street from which the front setback is marked. And so I'll show you a layout related to this property that helps make a bit more sense in a minute. But first, I wanted to identify the comprehensive plan designation for this property, and that 2008 land use plan kind of painted a broad brush of the Commerce Avenue area, and notes that it is a mixed-use D designation, and identifies that the corridor is suitable for commercial uses and various housing types. It also speaks to revitalization of Commerce Avenue, and that the plan calls for mixed-use development, so kind of mirroring what's there, but also revitalization, and could include public parks, restaurants, convenience retail, and a variety of housing types. So this layout shows 4th Street along the side. North Commerce Avenue would be considered the property's front, and then the alley is the rear. So based on that provision of the ordinance, there would have to be a primary facade entrance in this area that's circled in red. But the unit has to be placed in this direction in order to meet setbacks. So currently, the primary facade and entrance is not located there at that end of the property, but it can't be turned the other way because setbacks would not be achieved. So we have worked with the applicant to identify that if the permit were to be approved and the manufactured home moved to this location, they would be required to construct a primary facade entrance at this location facing North Commerce Avenue. We have, kind of briefly reviewed with the building official to kind of make sure the internal layout of the property provides the necessary hallway travelways that would be needed to have a primary facade at that location. And no official permits were submitted, but just general layouts of the internal kind of connectivity and hallways within the structure. And there are no kind of major concerns that wouldn't be possible. Any additional construction to add a primary facade would be permitted the same way any new construction is permitted, and all permits would be required. So this is an existing home. It does have an existing HUD label for the property. Just kind of for clarification purposes, anything that was constructed post 1976 that has a HUD certified label is termed a manufactured home. So it kind of covers a wide range of property, and anything before 76 doesn't have that HUD label and are often not referred to as manufactured housing. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing. There weren't no speakers at the public hearing, and the Planning Commission did recommend to approve the conditional use permit with 6 conditions. So the applicant would need to construct a primary entrance on the narrow facade of the proposed manufactured home that fronts on North Commerce, and that entrance would be constructed within 180 days after the building permit to place the home is issued, to give some time to work through building permits and the actual construction. Building permits would be required for any future decks, utilities, and for the placement of the home. So for additional clarification, it would be required to be hooked up to public water and sewer. Relocating the building needs to comply with 2018 or 2021 Virginia Construction Code, and that's some state codes related to transporting manufactured housing. And then again, the relocated building shall be subject to the 2021 Virginia Property Maintenance Code. And so that would cover kind of all the same property maintenance related provisions that the city has in place currently. Those would need to be reviewed prior to occupancy. All applicable building code requirements must be addressed before a certificate of occupancy would be issued. And then lastly, those 3 tenants that I had mentioned earlier that are within the zoning ordinance, those requirements to be either on a foundation or completely skirted, set up and tied down according to building code regulations, and then having any transporting equipment removed. So the Planning Commission recommends approval of the permit with the 6 conditions outlined. And I believe that covers everything. Unless you all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thoughts? I mean, I have went back and done some research, and I mean, I have some concerns as far as what's, the past here in Waynesboro. We've had times where we've seen new manufactured homes be approved, but used ones not. And what year was that constructed, that home?
The unit, I believe it was sometime in the 90s, 93, a Clayton home from, built in 1993. So it is an older unit, yes.
31 years old. Yeah, I have some reservations just because of the precedent set of previous cases in Waynesboro. Primarily is my thoughts.
Yeah, I would just offer too that I think I appreciated the Planning Commission's deliberation and thought that went to it, but I tend to agree with Mr. Wood and staff's recommendation. I think that this is a neighborhood that has it's an important neighborhood for our community that has a good number of vacant parcels that I think could create some real diversity in our housing stock, and create a portfolio of options for folks seeking affordable housing options. But that said, the proximity of incompatibility, I think, to existing structures and the implications, the long-term implications to that, I don't think would set a particularly good precedent for the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, if it was looking to put it in one of our, trailer parks in the area, mobile home parks or manufactured home parks, whatever's the correct way to say it, that would be one thing. But even they have limitations on age, or they have age restrictions in some of those facilities as well.
Yeah, and I think, for me, the age or condition is one variable, but I think we've approved conditional use placements in other parts, but there's typically been that type of housing within the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood.
Each case unique to itself.
Each case, it's why it's conditional use.
Yeah, agreed. Any other?
So I sit as a council rep on the Planning Commission, and when we heard this, there were a lot of factors, I think, for the Planning Commission to recommend approval. I do agree with both you and Terry that there are some concerns that I also have. However, I also am concerned with creating a potential homeless situation. So that's all I have.
Any other questions, comments?
I concur with you, Mr. Short.
Okay. All right, well, I think that's it for questions and comments. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I will ask the question. Is there a motion to introduce ordinance granting the conditional use permit?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Not hearing a second.
If I may, Vice Mayor,
Mhm.
procedurally, under the Virginia Code, with the CUP application, the applicant is basically guaranteed a public hearing. The way the Virginia Code sets out the timing between the ad and the public hearing and the governing body's decision, public hearing by fortuity is going to be on the second review of the application. So at this point, it leaves little flexibility for the governing body to.
So what you're
make
saying is
any
we're required to have a
substantive
public hearing?
decision. So we'll have to move forward to the August 12th. I mean, you can introduce it, but that's not saying that it's being, supported or
Mhm.
opposed or anything of that nature.
So-
It's just moving it forward.
Similar to a recent action where we recommended the advancement of the application to a public hearing at the
Correct.
August 12th meeting.
Correct.
So I'll put that in the form of a motion.
If
Okay.
Mr. Lee,
So then that makes it, your motion dies, your motion is accepted, you second?
Yes.
All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then that motion passes. It will be carried over to the August 12th meeting for the public hearing. Did I word that correctly?
Yep.
Good. All right. Yep. All right. Item 9 is to hold a public hearing on the recommended 2024 CDBG Annual Action Plan and the 5-year consolidated plan. Ms. Tate.
Okay, so we have covered this topic at several previous meetings, but tonight is the public hearing on those draft plans that have been posted for a 30-day public comment period. And these are for our 2024 to 2028 5-year consolidated plan, and then how we plan to use the 2024 CDBG entitlement funds, and that's outlined in our annual action plan. So the purpose of the public hearing is it's a requirement by HUD and for us to utilize those funds, that we hold a public hearing within the 30-day public comment period that the plans have been posted. And so we are having this public hearing to obtain the views and comments of individuals and organizations concerning not only the proposed 5-year consolidated plan, but the fiscal year 2024 program year. So just a little bit of background for the consolidated plan and the annual actual plan process. Staff has done a lot of work along with our consultants to have stakeholder consultation, reaching out to local government, public and private agencies, housing authorities. It is inclusive of a housing and homeless needs assessment, so utilizing quantifiable data, stakeholder input, and citizen participation to fill out that section. It includes a housing market analysis with, again, additional data that HUD requires, and then a strategic plan that identifies what are the goals or priorities that the city would like their entitlement program to go towards for the 2024 through 2028 timeframe. And then, again, define proposed activities for this fiscal year. So again, just a quick recap of eligible activities that you can utilize these funds for: housing rehab, home ownership assistance, public facilities and improvements, blight removal, code enforcement, economic development, acquisition or disposition of real property, or public services. But any of those different categories must meet one of the 3 national objectives. So 70% of the grant amount needs to benefit low and moderate income persons. No more than 30% could go towards the prevention or elimination of blight. And then another national objective that can be utilized is meeting urgent needs when health and welfare are threatened, and that often happens in times of disaster. So the 2024 annual action plan and the consolidated plan goals. So with this strategic planning process and looking at the next 5 years, what are the goals that were identified as part of that stakeholder process? So improving access to and the quality of housing, providing public services, improving public facilities and infrastructure, and then planning administration. And again, that is identified as a goal so that if in the future councils decided not to cover the planning and admin amounts in their general fund, we would have the ability to, although with this approved budget, that hasn't been done. But just to clarify why that's left in as a possibility, since it is a 5-year plan. And then, so for this program year, we have $167,321 to utilize for eligible activities. And I know you've heard these before, but I will cover the breakdown that is proposed in the plan. So $92,223,000 would be utilized for land acquisition for affordable housing development. So we would provide funds to purchase land that developers plan to develop housing for low to moderate income individuals through state low-income housing tax credits. And since I presented to you, we can confirm that both of the applications within the city that were applying for those credits were funded. The recommendation would be just to kind of split that amount between the two. And if for any reason that's not possible, or if we would come back and let you know, but that would be the way we would propose to proceed. And then, not to be confusing, but the estimated benefit, that is really conservative and extremely low. At the time, we didn't know which ones would be funded or how much, and so it's often helpful to put a lower end number in the plan just so you can show HUD that you have met that. But I will be working to kind of more closely define that number, because the number is closer to 150 total units. And so that's a very conservative number. And then $50,000 would be utilized for critical home repair. And so it would be funding an existing organization, Renewing Homes of Greater Augusta, who does critical home repair. Life work, and then the last 3 projects would be related to public services, which is capped at a certain amount. And so that these 3 organizations would take that full amount. So $10,000 to LifeWorks, which would be doing rent and utility assistance. So they would be providing that for income eligible households to help individuals and families that are in financial crisis to maintain their housing and prevent eviction or utility shutoff. $10,098 would be allocated for warm case management. So funds would be used to support case management activities for homeless families with children residing at the warm shelter, and pay for the costs for a part-time case manager. And then lastly, $5,000 would go to HERO, Housing Emergency Rent and Utility Relief. And again, funds would be provided for rental and utility assistance for eligible individuals and families. So that represents the projects that are proposed in the draft annual action plan for 2024. So we're having the public hearing this evening. The plans are also available for public comment until, I believe, July 18th. So anyone can submit written comments, and those will be addressed and put in as part of the plan. And so those can be sent to Alisanne Tombarge, our city planner, and this slide shows her contact information. And then just to give you a feel for the schedule, so the 5-year consolidated plan and the annual action plan, so I misspoke, it's actually on display through July 23rd. City Council will need to adopt that plan on August 12th, because that is kind of our final deadline, because submission to HUD needs to occur by August 15th for the program year to start October 1st when funds are available. So tonight is the required public hearing within the posted 30-day public comment period. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Ms. Tate?
Just confirming that you'd inquired, I think you're just going to say it so as much as you and I talking. So you'd inquired with HUD about the ability to do the 5-year consolidated plan once every 5 years, and we're told no, that's not possible. You have to do a new one every year?
Yeah, well, so the 5-year consolidated plan we do once every 5 years, but you have to do an annual action plan each year.
Each year?
Yeah, each year you
To
go,
execute your 5-year consolidated.
yes, because you don't know the amount you're getting, like that 167 that we're getting this year, it was 170 some last year, and you don't find that out until extremely late. So your 5-year is like, here are the priorities we want to address, but each year you have to hold outreach and public comment and start nailing down those specific activities you're going to use that year's program funds for. So we don't have the ability to kind of look at all 5 years and guess maybe how much money we'd have and lay out program, like specific activities for the whole year. We'd still have to go back out and do the public
But
outreach.
we could say, we're going to spend 70% on this, 15% on that, and 15% on this. And then it doesn't matter what the math works out to be. It's always 70, 15, 15. Right?
Yeah, I,
They won't let us do that.
yes, I think the HUD requirements are just very strict, that we do our 5-year, and then every year we do these annual action plans.
Yeah. So again, this is just an acknowledgement to all of your work, and the community outreach, I think, has been superb. I think just as an observer and a little frustration, I would ask and see if my colleagues would be interested in doing this, is to ask the city manager to put a letter together to our congressional delegation outlining that for a $167,000 annual obligation, the mechanics that have to go to this is the amount of
bit
staff
much.
time, outreach. I mean, you could literally simplify the entire thing, do your 5-year plan, define your percentages that you want to break out, and then execute your 5-year plan and not have to go through this every single year for $167,000 and change.
And I know that HUD does put out kind of a comment period every year to say, like, share your frustrations with the program. I'm not sure if we included any this year, but certainly have in the past, and have heard other organizations share those. And then I think it's just, kind of how they maybe make small incremental changes every year, but it's definitely something that the letter, and then also we could continue to put in those comments.
I mean, yeah, ours is small compared to, I'm sure, the city of Richmond or
Sure.
Alexandria or Bristol, and so we pale in comparison, but I think just the bureaucracy of it, see if there's any interest in my
Still a lot of
colleagues
waste
to do
in
that.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other localities, have they discussed that in the past?
I don't know,
Is there any way to find, is there any way to find that out? I
Bruce
mean,
will attest to this. I mean, I think I expressed frustration with it on our side
Yeah.
of, but I'm not aware of what others sort of say. But you could literally just fix this 5-year plan, lay out your percentages. That's what we want to invest in for 5 years, and everybody knows that they're going to get a slice of the pie over a 5-year period, and you can avoid the whole thing.
So, and our staff typically attends like kind of a meeting of the minds around HUD once a year, and certainly hear from other organizations. Again, it's drastically different across the state, so some are getting significantly larger amounts of money, but we do hear some of similar concerns from programs our size of kind of like, where's that sweet spot of finding, and I guess the hard part written into the federal code is they're not really thinking about all the differences in the localities, but that's certainly a good comment we could give of, if you're getting less than $300,000, maybe that every year process isn't necessary.
yeah, I just ask because more voices make a bigger noise, All right. Well, for any other questions for Ms. Tate? Then with that being said, I hereby open the public hearing.
No one has signed up to speak.
In that case, I hereby close the public hearing. All right, council will vote on the plans at the August 12th meeting. All right, on to item 10. Item 10 is to consider adopting resolutions supporting the city's funding applications to the VDOT Smart Scale program for 3 projects. It's a busy night for you, Ms. Tate.
Okay, so the agenda briefing that was included in your packets went into kind of a long, detailed history of the Smart Scale program and different projects that the city has funded through that program. So I won't go into all of that detail, but will say that the state has kind of identified the Smart Scale program as a way to kind of essentially take the politics out of funding transportation projects and really evaluate them on their merits based on kind of the cost benefit of that project. And based on what region of the state you're in, there are different kind of scoring criterias, and points matter differently in certain areas. But the SMART scale criteria is typically looking at, how does it improve safety, congestion mitigation, accessibility. It does look at environmental quality, and then economic development potential of how it might help attract businesses. And then all of those benefits that are identified through very detailed studies that are required as part of the application are then evaluated against that total project cost. And then another thing I wanted to mention is projects. So I think the first round or project, and this is an every 2-year open application process. And so projects that were funded in 2016 are just now being built. So I think that's also an important thing to kind of just identify that these are projects we're planning for and we're going to apply for, but seeing them, if they are funded, seeing them actually built on the ground is some time out. So I'm going to review the 3 applications that staff has submitted. So we've submitted pre-applications, which is a requirement of the grant funding process, and then need to follow up by August 1st with our final applications. And so we're requesting resolutions of support for the 3 pre-applications that we identified in order to make that deadline. So the first is a Lou DeWitt pedestrian project. So it's proposing to construct approximately 1.1 miles of sidewalk along the west side of Lou DeWitt from West Main Street to Lucy Lane, and does include a signalized pedestrian crossing at Lucy Lane. And so this is just kind of a rough sketch of shows how that would lay out. You have the crossing here at Lucy Lane, and it would include obviously sidewalk and ADA pedestrian kind of requirements along that western side of Lou DeWitt. And again, it's a pretty simple sidewalk project, but it is a quite significant distance, and this is a corridor that has identified needs for pedestrian safety. And this just kind of continues to show how that would tie into either existing and then come all the way out at West Main. So the main improvement is a sidewalk project, and it would have ADA accessibility and then the crossing at Lucy Lane. And so certainly there's some along there that kind of has been constructed, and so it would be tying into any of those places. But for the most part, it's a corridor without pedestrian facilities that is developing, and this would be an important asset for pedestrian safety.
Let's see, on the east side of the street, the plan for that is a shared use path, right? Yes,
so there are some area, I know that has been identified, and some of it has been kind of given as easements through different development. And we did have our consultants, and I meant to bring the actual cost, but we did have our consultants look at the possibility of like weighing the sidewalk as opposed to the shared use on this side. And based on kind of the costs they identified, the sidewalk definitely felt like that it would make more sense in this location on that side of the roadway.
Yeah. Well, I think since we've having folks build sidewalks out there, that makes good sense to use that. I mean, I think there's certainly value to have it on both sides of the road, given the speed and the volume. So, okay, thank you.
And then the next application, we're calling it a transit access improvement project. So this project proposes various improvements to 6 existing bus stops within the city. So this is the existing Walmart stop. So the proposal would be to improve that existing stop, to tie new sidewalk and crossing into existing sidewalk. It would have kind of an improved bus pad. And then you can just see some of the other improvements like ADA ramps and the distances of sidewalk that would be needed to kind of create an improved access project at that location. The next is Walmart, the market. And again, there's an existing stop there, but it's just a sign on a grassy area. So it would be a bus shelter, a bus pad, some site grading to make that connection there. The next is at Mountain View Apartments. So trying to tie to existing sidewalk system on the west side of Ivy, it would be a bus shelter, a bus pad, and some crossing signs, a rapid flashing beacon system, and some ADA ramps. And, again, I will point out that these are all kind of in very conceptual stages, and you just submit like a site sketch, and kind of the more detailed engineering would come if approved. Another stop location identified for improvement would be the DMV stop. That's near the Food Lion off of Hopeman. And again, it would mainly be kind of a crossing, bus pad, bus shelter, and the necessary ADA facilities to make that compliant. The Speedway gas station is another identified location for improvements. Bus shelter, bus pad, and a little bit of sidewalk to make those connectivity. And I think the last one was Kroger, where that existing stop is, to provide a bus shelter at that location. And so I believe we have like 30 bus stops within the city, and so we kind of took some data and we're trying to figure out which are the ones that are utilized the most. And so these 6 kind of rose to the top in terms of that and other interest and kind of anecdotal information about where we see people most. Through SmartScale, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation is who does the scoring. So we've been working with them. A lot of times they identified that bus stop improvements are usually wrapped into some kind of larger transportation project. So they don't typically see kind of just 6 stops identified, but they didn't discourage us from applying and said that, they would definitely encourage us to apply. But they did identify that if the project wasn't successful, they put out a different funding source, and I believe the applications would be due in December, and it's specifically through the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And it was a really small match amount, and maybe even that could be covered through something else. So we have another avenue if it happens to not be successful through SmartScale. And then the last one is just kind of a redo that we continue to put in and hasn't been funded, but that's the Crozet Tunnel Trail that would kind of provide that connectivity from where the funded East Main Street Streetscape project would end up to the Crozet Tunnel. So we've put in for SmartScale, we've put in for Build and Raise grants for that, and just kind of having a hard time finding that grant program that matches, but we will be putting that one in again, and this might be a little bit of an outdated sketch in terms of pricing, so don't look at that, just look at what the project is detailing, and all of that would be updated with this application. So tonight we'd be requesting resolutions of support for those 3 projects so that we could apply by the August 1st deadline.
So August 1st is the deadline. When would they make the decision?
Do we typically hear, I'm trying to think.
And the draft results will come out in
January.
February, and then adopt in a 6-year program, July 2025.
So the secondary source you were talking about, would that be due in December or open in December?
Yeah, I think we would have kind of the flexibility, like we would say, well, we applied through SmartScale, but we're going to go ahead and apply here, and we might get, if we were to get funded through the DRPT program alone, we could probably move the project along a lot quicker than through SmartScale. So it wouldn't preclude us from applying to both, and maybe, depending on how much the match is and what it looks like, we could likely get that done a lot quicker than if it was funded through SmartScale.
If you got funded through SmartScale, you wouldn't get year 1 funding until the year 2030.
Yeah.
Yeah. 5303 funds, that's a good idea, because those are immediate.
Yep.
Basically, they're available immediately.
So we've had, lots of good conversations with people at DRPT, and they're kind of helping us guide us through that.
Good deal. All right, any other questions?
I'm just super excited about the transit one, and I don't know if it's helpful at all for the applications, but I mean, I remember taking Molly over to Kate Collins for our first year over there, and I think on day 1 was just like there are literally people with their feet in the gutter waiting for the bus, and they're still out there doing that. And so if there's any kind of compelling case for this project and the benefit of folks that as we see our transit ridership increasing, the need increasing, the affordability being important. It would just, I think it'd be great to document. It's a picture just says 1,000 words.
So we already know what your vote's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It's just a resolution. So.
Yeah. All right, well, was there any other questions, Ms. Tate? All right, if there's no objections, we can do all three of these in one motion, approve all three resolutions in one motion. So if there's no objections from my fellow councilmen, then I will ask for a motion to adopt these resolutions.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is a 4-0 vote to approve all three resolutions for the Smart Scale project. All right, item 11, communication, correspondence, and calendar. Mr. Hamp.
Yes, sir. I do have a couple items this evening. Pardon me. So first of all, a calendar reminder that our July 22nd meeting is canceled, and this is per the meeting schedule that we adopted at the beginning of the calendar year. Secondly, wanted to make the council and those present and the listening public aware that next week, the SAW localities are holding town hall meetings. On Tuesday, the 16th at 6 p.m., there'll be a virtual town hall meeting. And then on Wednesday, July 17th at 6 p.m. in the Stanton Council Chambers, there'll be in-person town hall meeting. These are for individuals and families who have been impacted by opioid misuse or addiction. The SAW localities are working collaboratively together to assess misuse and treatment environment in our communities. And ultimately, our goal is to develop regional strategies to impact opioid misuse. For information about those two town hall meetings, you can go to our website or look on our Facebook page. The Office on Youth Facebook has it. Our website is www.waynesboro.va.us. And just for information purposes, there's also a town hall meeting on Thursday in the morning for stakeholders and providers. So we're trying to capture input from the community to help shape solutions, help better understand the environment for that. Ultimately, to come up with strategies to use the abatement funds that come to each individual locality. Finally, I'm happy to let the council know that the area has received a fatherhood grant. That was actually applied for by the Shenandoah Valley DSS with input and collaboration with the Office on Youth. This is a $12,500 grant that will go to train DSS and community partner agencies on the importance of fathers in a child's life. The money will also enhance and expand offerings at the Office on Youth for fatherhood classes, 24/7 dads, inside out dads, and fathering in 15. These are various programs that the Office on Youth delivers to the community to help encourage fathers and strengthen parenting skills, especially for fathers. So it's kind of a good news story, and I'm sure that those two agencies will use the funds effectively to build health in the community. That's all that I have.
Certainly hope so. All right. Then we move on to item 12, citizen comment. Is anybody signed?
Yes, sir. I have two individuals. So pardon me, Mr. Wilson A. Camden, perhaps? I'm not seeing the last name clearly. Camden. Okay.
My name's Wilson Camden, and I live at 300 South Wayne, which is the Springdale Apartments. I'm not here to talk about them. I'm talking about the sidewalks that the city owns around that area, specifically on South Wayne on the east side. I got to use this thing because my balance and everything's out of whack.
No, thank you.
So trying to use that sidewalk on the east side is really terrible for somebody with a disability. And I think it would be good for the city if they were to fix it up, replace it somehow if you could, because some parts of that sidewalk are just pushed up from the tree roots that are alongside that street, and also down on Market Street that runs to Kroger's. There's an abandoned store there, and it's got kind of like a slope to it that goes to the street, and that makes it really impossible for me to use that sidewalk because of it like that. And so what I have to do is, when I go to walk to Kroger's for the groceries, I have to use the Waynesboro Police Department parking lot, and I hate doing that because, I'm probably breaking the law by jaywalking by crossing the street from the police department over to Kroger's. But I just don't feel safe using that sidewalk. And I know that the sidewalk that's on the side where Fishburne is, that was redone. And it's real nice, but trying to use that to get down to the library and cross the road to get to the library that way isn't safe, because you just got one crosswalk there, and some people just don't pay attention to the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit down through that section. So I just think that those sidewalks for people with disabilities, and even without disabilities, would be an improvement for this city, and for people like me that have to walk downtown and everything like that. So, that's basically all I've got to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camden.
Mr. Ed Borman.
Mr. Foreman.
I'm sure everybody in here has seen what I'm going to be talking about. I don't know if the town has hired an outside company or if the town did it, the blacktopping of the roads. That has to be the most worst blacktop I've ever seen in my life. I mean, if you go along, you can see on the road, it looks like part of it is a little bit higher than like the middle. And I know that the railway company has the responsibility of doing by the train tracks, but there's like a good 3-4 feet from the track to where they were blacktopping. I don't see why they couldn't have come up further, but I don't know, the job that they did on the roads, to me, is piss poor. It really is. And that's all I want to say.
Well, I'm sorry, let me ask, what was the street address where you're talking about? The street that you were talking about where the paving you're discussing?
Where the train tracks were?
What street, yeah, what street?
Windsor.
Windsor? Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
That's real bad right there. It's real bad.
all right.
But you still see freaking idiots fly across the doggone thing.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Borman.
Thank you, sir.
We'll look in.
And Mike, just for the benefit that I actually drove that too, and right after a storm event, and there is major ponding on the east side of the rail tracks. So, if unaddressed, when the time the winter comes, it's going to be a awful mess.
Okay.
Was that a section that was paved or microsealed?
Microseal.
Okay.
Can I ask you something? The job that's done now on the road, is that it? Are they going to put another top coating on it, or?
So the microseal is a thin coat. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I don't know. I think the other Mr. Wood in the room would be able to give you a more professional answer to that than I could, being the engineer. I'm hoping I'm not putting you on the spot.
I'll do my best.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the micro seal is a type of pavement that goes down in a thin coat with a thin layer of gravel, and it's not meant to be as smooth as the other. We don't have to mill the pavement. It costs about 25% less, or 75% less to extend the road life, and that's the goal of it.
So they're not going to put a top coating over it?
No, that is the top coating. In time, it will wear better as temperature gets hot. Cars start running over top of it. It will wear down and smooth out in time.
You can tell it's a cheaper job, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I'd be embarrassed to say, I hired these people to do it,
Well, it's looking the way it's supposed to. VDOT started using it several years ago, and they use it on 250 between here and Stanton, and it wears in time. But yeah, it's not what people are used to when they get a brand new paved road.
Yep. Yep, all right. Thank you, Mr. Hamp. All right, so that's the end of the citizen comment period, so the only thing left is for Mr. Allen to give us a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make that motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, we are adjourned.